I have experienced a Fethullah of an imam, deeply committed to his faith, deeply committed Muslim, that is helping the faith be real in this 21st century. I'm Reverend Paul Kottke. I'm senior pastor at University Park, United Methodist Church in Denver, Colorado. I've been pastor there for 20 years, been ordained for 30 years in the United Methodist Church. I also head up a council through the University of Denver called the Religious Advisory Council that's been in place for 13 years now, that involves 30 interfaith leaders from the Denver area. I was first introduced to the Hizmet'e movement via a tour to Turkey, where my wife and I, along with some other religious leaders, were invited as guests. Of course, I knew it at that time as the Fethullah Gulen movement, and that was my initial exposure to that. I experienced an awareness within the Islamic faith that was different than I had with, say, the Arabic Muslims. And so I was very intrigued by the Hizmet'e movement. I guess what I am most, in those initial days on the tour, I expected somewhere for us to have a very significant presentation of the beliefs of what Gülen stood for. And I remember sitting next to one of the guides on the tour, Huma, and it was into the third day, and I still had not gotten any kind of a propaganda statement, which would have been fine. And finally I turned to her and I said, okay, so what's the propaganda? And she started laughing. And she said, there is no propaganda. And I said, so why are we doing this trip? And she said, well, we want you to see Turkey, and we want you to experience who we are. And so my experience of the Hizmet'e movement, particularly as I have encountered in the Mosaic here back in Denver, is a very gentle people. A people that did not push in any way onto me a rigid set of beliefs. And I continue in these last 5 years, that same experience has been consistently present. A gentle people, a people very committed to their faith, a people very committed to their faith engaging society here and now, particularly in science and technology. A people that owe a great deal of allegiance to Fethullah Gulen, but I do not experience a people that march to his orders. I don't experience that he has orders. I think what he's inviting people is into a faith relationship that has changed their lives, and they live out of that life. So what I've experienced in my thoughts of the movement is very impressive. I'm not a scholar, and I would be the first to say I've not delved into deep details around Gülen. I experience him on the surface level with what's presented. But over these last few years that I've been involved with the mosaics here in Denver, I've paid attention to when information surfaces. And the information that has surfaced for me has always been consistent, which is a major thing of importance for me. It feels to me like if somebody is presenting an image that's not real, at some point it becomes inconsistent. And so I have experienced a Fethullah of an imam, deeply committed to his faith, deeply committed Muslim, that is helping the faith be real in this 21st century, which I think is incredible task, and it's not an easy task because there's going to be a lot of people critical of that. This is true not only in Islam, but it's true in Christianity too. And so anybody that tries to move into a new understanding, embracing the ancient beliefs, usually gets criticized. And those criticisms can come up in a variety of ways. So the fact that he gets criticized doesn't concern me at all. What I'm pleased with is his consistency, that he does not, I've not ever heard him lash out. He defends himself, but mostly he is very committed to a radical unity that comes through dialogue, comes through education, comes through people simply being together. And I too am one that is very committed to radical unity. We each can come to this unity through our particular faith traditions. I'm a very passionate Christian, very committed to being a Christian. But I do not believe in a Christianity that is triumphantly dominating other faiths. I do not believe that's what Jesus Christ advocated. And I get the same experience from Fethullah Gulen, that he is not interested in an Islamic tradition that controls others, but rather invites others into their deep faith system. He has invited, it seems to me, a huge number of Muslims, certainly in Turkey, but larger than that, to embrace an authentic Islam that embraces at the same time science and technology. There are Islamic voices, as there are Christian voices, that would say education is not welcome. We see some of that in Africa, where they do not want women to be educated. The Fethullah Gulen movement has welcomed women being educated. And again, that's one of the things that I really appreciate about the movement. And it's very clear to me in the tour that I took 5 years ago, 3 of the guides were women. And there was no defensiveness with them. I was able to ask them any question. They were well-educated women, masters and PhDs, and the whole movement embraces that and encourages the women. I think that's a major issue in the world today, the education of women, and I think Gülen has helped open that door through his teachings and allowed Muslims to say, yes, there's nothing contradictory about this to the Quran. Some of my greatest learnings in going on the tour, prior to this tour that I took 5 years ago, where I was invited as a guest, as well as I think there were 12 of us invited as guests, my wife and I went, I really knew nothing about Turkey. I knew nothing about Islam in Turkey. My experience, I've been involved with interfaith for 30 years. My experience with Islam has always been Arabic Islam. And I never really understood that there was different perspectives around this. And it was being with what I would call the Turkish Muslim movement, Islamic movement. And I know that Fethullah Gulen doesn't represent the voice of Turkish Muslims, but he represents a significant voice. And that's what I valued, was that he seems to be on this cutting edge of Islam going through some major changes. I know, for instance, with the Islamic movement here in the United States, of what I would call the indigenous Islamic movement, where the imams are born and raised here in the United States and then trained and then come back and they lead mosques, that there's a significant tension within the Islamic movement for the young people to find a faith that is integrated to their lives as they experience that. And my experience, my belief is that Fethullah Gulen was one of the first imams to really wrestle with this question. And it doesn't surprise me then that he gets criticism both from the secular Turkish government and movement, if you will, and the more conservative religious Islamic movement within Turkey. my experience is anybody that tries to walk towards change and tries to do it gently and in the middle of the road, so to speak, is going to get attacked from both sides. I personally have experienced that in some of my own ministries. So his ability to invite people into this tension without them also becoming defensive and aggressive is a wonderful contribution. Again, from my perspective, I'm not a scholar, Islamic scholar, but I am a person as a Christian pastor and a leader for this council through the university. I am one that works with interfaith voices a lot. And I can perceive, I believe, with a fair amount of integrity, when a voice is authentic and when it's not authentic. And what I witness in, say, Africa, with the kidnapping of the girls as a way of undermining education, or in Pakistan when a girl gets shot on a bus as a way of undermining, that has nothing to do with religion and everything to do with a few, basically men, trying to control a large group of people. And they're using religion to cover up their desire to just dominate. And we, as a religious voice, have to be clear that that's not okay, that religion doesn't justify that. I don't care what they quote from the Bible or from the Quran, religion does not justify that violence. We do not believe in a God who justifies that violence. We do not believe in Allah who justifies that violence. So it is critically important to have an Islamic voice out here that says education is essential. And I think that's what the schools of the Gülen movement have taught. I've been to one of the schools in Turkey, was very impressed with it. I'm aware that there's well over 100, 130 throughout the world. I believe that they are engaging students and teachers in a way that elevates the standard of education. And I do not see any evidence that this education is brainwashing, is teaching a certain doctrine or dogma. I see it as truly educational, and people's lives are being transformed. And the Gülen movement, from my perspective, has been stellar within the Islamic movement, and I think is helping to move the Islam across, particularly here in the United States, to a new level of kind of boldness, if you will.